Welcome to this channel, where every story reveals hidden truths about love, family, and resilience. Here we tell the kinds of dramas that keep you on the edge of your seat and remind you how powerful a woman's voice can be. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a moment. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a reflection of choices, secrets, and the strength it takes to face them. What would you do if the person who should mourn with you seemed more focused on what she might gain from your loss? Stay with me, because this story will keep you questioning until the very end. And before we begin, don't forget to subscribe. Every story here reveals the truths we often whisper but rarely dare to tell. The call came at 2. I have always dreaded phones ringing in the middle of the night. My hand trembled as I reached for it, already fearing the worst. Mrs. Reynolds, this is Mercy Hospital. Your son, James, has been admitted with a suspected brain aneurysm. You should come immediately. The words made the world tilt beneath me. James, my brilliant, kind-hearted only child, couldn't be dying. I was 65, and I had already buried my husband 10 years earlier. But nothing could prepare a mother for this. I slipped into my coat, still wearing my nightgown underneath, hair uncombed, my body trembling as I drove through the darkness. At the hospital, a doctor with tired eyes met me in a small consultation room. His words shattered me completely. Massive aneurysm, no warning signs. Nothing could have been done. My James was gone before I even arrived. Hours blurred as I signed papers no mother should ever have to face. By the time morning light crept through the blinds, grief had hollowed me out. It was nearly noon when Sophia finally arrived. She walked in wearing oversized sunglasses, her manicure flawless, her phone in hand. There was traffic, she said flatly, not meeting my eyes. I had to find someone to watch Lucas. I had already spoken to Lucas's teacher myself, making sure my 8-year-old grandson was cared for. That Sophia hadn't even thought of it told me everything I needed to know. When I whispered, "James is gone," I watched her reaction closely. Her lips parted. Her hand touched her throat in a perfect gesture of shock. But I had studied human behavior for decades. Her sorrow looked rehearsed, like a performance for an audience. And in that moment, through my tears, something deep inside me stirred. A warning that my greatest challenge as a mother had only just begun. The church was filled with mourners, yet I felt completely alone. My son's casket rested at the front, surrounded by flowers, while whispered condolences floated around me like distant echoes. I had attended enough funerals in my 65 years to know the difference between genuine grief and performance. Sophia sat beside me, draped in a designer black dress that was both flattering and somber. She leaned against me occasionally, her handkerchief dabbing at eyes that were suspiciously dry. To those around us, we looked united, the grieving widow and the heartbroken mother. But only I could feel how lightly she leaned, ready to straighten the moment someone important approached. Her eyes swept the room constantly, calculating who was worth her attention. On my other side sat Lucas. My sweet 8-year-old grandson shook with real sobs, his small face blotchy from endless tears. He whispered to me, "Is Daddy really in there?" I held him close, explaining softly that while his body rested there, the love and spirit that made him, Daddy would always be with him. He nodded, seeming to understand more than many adults. After the service, as I comforted Lucas, I noticed Sophia whispering urgently to a tall man in an expensive suit. She introduced him as Richard Harlow, one of James's business partners. His handshake was cold, his words empty. The way Sophia's hand brushed his arm lingered in my mind like a red flag. By evening, exhaustion consumed me. That was when Thomas Bennett, James's closest friend and attorney, pulled me aside. His eyes, rimmed red from grief, carried something else too. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "James left instructions. We need to meet tomorrow about the will." He hesitated before adding, "He wanted me to tell you one thing right away. Trust your instincts about Lucas." My chest tightened. I looked over at my grandson, asleep on a couch, his small hand clutching a tissue. Then at Sophia, her face lit by the glow of her phone screen, untouched by grief. Something told me Thomas was right. I would need every instinct I had to protect Lucas from what was coming. The next afternoon, I sat in Thomas Bennett's office, my hands folded tightly in my lap as he opened the folder marked with my son's name. Sophia sat across from me, legs crossed, her nails tapping against the leather chair. Her sunglasses were gone now, and her eyes glittered with something sharper than grief. "According to James's will?" Thomas began, his voice steady. "Sophia inherits the lake house, the investment portfolio, and a life insurance policy of $500,000. I watched her face flicker from satisfaction to confusion as Thomas continued. "The family home, both vehicles, and his personal bank account are left to Eleanor Reynolds." Sophia's composure cracked. "That's impossible," she snapped, her voice rising. "The house is mine. We bought it together. This must be a mistake." Thomas slid a document across the desk. "The deed shows James purchased it in his name before the marriage. It was never converted to joint property. The paperwork is clear." I kept my expression calm, though my heart pounded. I had never known James made these changes. He had prepared in silence, protecting us. "What about Lucas's college fund?" Sophia demanded, her tone like ice. "There is a trust," Thomas said. "Eleanor is named trustee." The silence that followed was heavy. Sophia's jaw tightened, and I could almost see the calculations behind her eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice carried false sweetness. "Eleanor, surely you don't intend to take Lucas out of his own home?" James would have wanted his son to stay where he belongs. It was a clever twist, framing me as the villain. But I remembered my son's careful handwriting in the letter Thomas had given me earlier. "Don't let her manipulate you. Watch and wait." I forced a sympathetic smile. "I'm as surprised as you are, Sophia. I need time to process all this." Her eyes narrowed, but she nodded. "Of course. For Lucas's sake, I'll be patient." As she left the office, her phone already pressed to her ear, I overheard her low, furious whisper. "The house, the cars, even the trust. No, he never suspected. It must have been his mother's doing. I'll fight it. I deserve more." I stayed behind, clutching the sealed letter Thomas had placed in my hands. My son's handwriting stared back at me. With shaking fingers, I opened it. "Mom, if you're reading this, the unthinkable has happened. I know Sophia will try to take control. I've left everything in your hands for a reason. Protect Lucas. Document everything. Trust no one but Thomas. I love you." Tears blurred the ink as I pressed the letter to my chest. My son was gone, but his warning was clear. The battle had only just begun. The days that followed were a blur of grief, mixed with a rising tension I could not ignore. Sophia appeared at the house one morning, her heels clicking across the kitchen tile as if she were entering a stage. She wore a sleek black suit, her face perfectly made up, her voice wrapped in false concern. "Eleanor," she began, pouring herself a cup of coffee, as though the kitchen already belonged to her. "This situation is overwhelming for both of us. I think it's best if we make decisions quickly. For Lucas's sake." Her tone was honey, but her eyes were steel. She slid into a chair at the kitchen island, stirring her coffee slowly. "This house holds so many memories of James. Every room reminds Lucas of what he's lost. It would be better for him if we started fresh. I've found a lovely condo downtown. Excellent schools, near the museum and library." I set down my cup carefully. "You're considering moving?" She sighed dramatically, placing a hand on mine with practiced sympathy. "Yes, but with the way James arranged things, I'll need your cooperation. The house should be mine. James never meant to put me in such a difficult position." Her words tightened like a noose. "It was the first attempt. Clear as day." "I see," I said softly, tilting my head as though confused. "And what about the fact that James updated his will only 3 months ago?" A flicker of irritation crossed her face before she smoothed it away. He wasn't himself then. Overworked, stressed. He wasn't thinking clearly about our family's best interests. "You must see that—" I sipped my coffee, forcing a polite smile. Inside, James's warning echoed in my mind. "If she will try to manipulate you, don't let her know what you know." "I understand your concern," I said gently. But perhaps we should give ourselves a little time. Decisions made in the middle of grief are rarely wise. Her smile tightened. Of course. Take the weekend. But, Eleanor, she added, lowering her voice, if you really care about Lucas, you'll do what's best for him. Children need stability. They don't understand legal documents. They just need their mother. Her words were sharp, cloaked in the language of love. She thought she had me cornered, but I had seen this performance before. I let her leave believing I was still pliable, still weak with grief. The moment the door closed, I picked up the phone. Thomas, I whispered, you were right. She's already trying to force my hand. We need to be ready. Whatever evidence James left behind, we need it now. This was no longer just grief. It was war. It was Thomas who placed the final piece of the puzzle in my hands. A thick envelope delivered by courier, sealed with his office's stamp. James wanted you to see this if things ever became dangerous, he had said. Inside were printed messages, months of texts between Sophia and someone saved as R.H. Richard Harlow, the same man I had seen at the funeral. Their words were damning. Secret meetings, complaints about James, plans for a fresh start once the financials were in order, and always the same chilling refrain. Lucas was a complication. My hands shook as I read the investigator's report. Photographs of Sophia and Richard entering a hotel together. Credit card records of expensive gifts. Notes on Richard's questionable business dealings. And finally, a letter from my son to his attorney, written only weeks before his death. Tom, I'm not sure what my next step should be. Confronting her could put Lucas at risk. Protect him above all. The truth burned like fire in my chest. My son had known. He had changed his will not out of bitterness, but out of fear. That evening, Sophia breezed into the house to collect Lucas for what she called a healing weekend trip. Miami, she said casually, smiling as if it were nothing. Richard has a boat. It'll be good for Lucas to get away. Lucas's eyes dimmed when he told me later. Mom says I don't have to finish my science project, but Dad always said commitments are important. His voice broke on the word, Dad, and I swallowed my anger to soothe him. When I confronted Sophia, she brushed me off with her usual charm. Don't worry, Eleanor. Children need new experiences to heal. Lucas will be fine. But I had already seen the truth in black and white. This wasn't about healing. It was about erasing. Erasing James. Erasing me. Erasing everything that didn't fit into her new life with Richard. As I kissed Lucas goodnight before their trip, his small hand clutched mine tighter than usual. Grandma, he whispered, will you be here when I come back? I forced a smile through the dread twisting in my stomach. Always, sweetheart. I'll always be here. But when the door closed behind them the next morning, I knew. Sophia had declared her move, and now it was my turn. The game between us was no longer subtle. It was war, and only one of us truly had Lucas's best interests at heart. Lucas returned from Miami with sunburned shoulders, a stomachache from too much ice cream, and a silence that cut me deeper than any words could. He trudged through the front door hours later than Sophia had promised, his small frame heavy with exhaustion. How was your trip, sweetheart? I asked, kneeling to his level. His eyes stayed down, his voice barely a whisper. The boat made me sick. Behind him, Sophia was already scrolling through her phone. He's being dramatic. It was just a little motion sickness. The resort was 5-star. The weather was perfect. He had a wonderful time. But the look on my grandson's face told me a very different story. Can I go to my room? He mumbled. I nodded, fighting the urge to demand answers from Sophia, right there in the kitchen. When I asked about his school bag, she waved dismissively. It got wet on the boat. Nothing important. Nothing important. His science project had been in that bag. The project he'd told me he wanted to finish because it mattered to him. Later upstairs, I found him sitting on his bed, staring at a photo of James. Want to tell me about the trip? I asked gently. His lip trembled. Mom and Richard left me with the hotel babysitter, even at night. I woke up and didn't know where I was. I got scared. I called her room, but she didn't answer. The fury inside me was cold and sharp, but I kept my voice calm. That must have been frightening. He nodded. Richard said kids mess things up. And Mom laughed. His small hands twisted the hem of his shirt. Dad always let me help on the boat. Richard wouldn't even let me touch anything. Each detail was another weight on my heart, and another piece of evidence for the journal I was keeping. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern only grew clearer. Sophia stayed out late, leaving Lucas with me more often than not. She missed his school conference. She forgot to refill his asthma medication, nearly causing a crisis at soccer practice. Every incident, every broken promise I documented carefully. The cameras I'd installed at Thomas's suggestion captured moments that were even harder to bear. Sophia stumbling into the house with Richard late at night, while Lucas was still awake. Sophia reminding Lucas to tell Grandma you had fun, even when he hadn't. Through it all, I played my role, the supportive, grief-stricken mother-in-law who offered help without judgment. To Sophia, I appeared manageable, pliable, still mourning too much to resist. But in truth, I was gathering every scrap of proof I needed, not for me, but for the boy who now looked up at me with eyes far too wise for his age. "Grandma," Lucas whispered one evening, "are you going to live here instead of Mom? Because I want you to stay." I kissed his forehead and whispered back, "I'll do everything I can to be right here, sweetheart." It was more than a promise. It was a vow. Sophia's mask of civility finally slipped during a dinner she invited me to at an upscale restaurant downtown. She greeted me warmly, ordering champagne I never liked, pretending to know my tastes. It was the same performance as always. Soft lighting, a carefully chosen dress that whispered grief but radiated power. "Eleanor," she said with false tenderness, "we both know James's will has created complications. The house, the cars, the accounts. None of this is what he truly intended. He wasn't in his right mind." I listened silently, letting her spin her web. Then she leaned in, her voice low and deliberate. "There's a simple way to fix this. You transfer everything back to me, where it belongs. And in return, I'll guarantee you can see Lucas every other weekend, holidays. I'll even put it in writing." My breath caught. She wasn't asking. She was bargaining with my grandson as if he were property. That's generous. I managed keeping my face neutral while my heart pounded. She smiled, mistaking my restraint for hesitation. "Most women in my position would cut you out entirely, but I value Lucas's bond with you. And frankly, I could use the help. Single motherhood is exhausting." Her words dripped with arrogance, but beneath them was calculation. What she wanted wasn't family unity. It was freedom. Freedom to pursue Richard. Freedom to move to Arizona or beyond. Free from the last pieces of James that tethered her. As dessert plates were cleared, she pulled out a folded document from her purse. "My attorney drafted this. It's straightforward. Sign it, and we can all move forward without messy courts or ugly battles." I slipped the paper into my own bag without unfolding it. "I'll review it," I said softly. James always told me never to sign anything without careful thought. Her jaw tightened at the mention of James, but she quickly replaced it with a smile. "Don't take too long. Lucas deserves stability. Fighting me will only hurt him." The threat was clear. She thought she had cornered me. That grief made me weak, but as I walked out into the night air, I knew different. Sophia had just handed me what I needed most, proof of her true intentions. She believed she was winning. She had no idea she'd already lost. The courtroom was colder than I expected, all marble floors and echoes that made every word seem sharper than it should. I sat beside Thomas, hands folded in my lap, while across the aisle Sophia looked the very image of a grieving widow. She wore a plain black dress, her hair pulled back simply. Her eyes rimmed with makeup meant to mimic tears. A framed photo of James and Lucas rested in front of her, a prop for the role she had chosen to play. Judge Carlton entered with brisk authority, her gaze moving between us before she spoke. "This is an emergency custody hearing regarding minor child, Lucas Reynolds. I've reviewed the petition and supporting documents. Let's proceed." Thomas presented our case methodically. The late-night absences, the Miami trip where Lucas had been left with strangers, the school conference Sophia missed, the asthma medication she forgot, the evidence of her relationship with Richard, and finally the document where she had tried to barter my grandson for the house. Sophia's attorney rose with a practiced smile, painting me as a controlling mother-in-law blinded by grief. Mrs. Reynolds has been over-involved, manipulating the child against his mother. My client is a devoted parent, temporarily overwhelmed by tragedy. Nothing more. When my turn came, I spoke only of Lucas, his fear of being taken to Arizona, his whispered questions about whether I would still be there when he woke up, his need for stability when his world had already been torn apart. My voice shook, but my resolve did not. I am not asking to replace his mother. I am asking to protect him during the most vulnerable time of his young life. The judge listened in silence, her face unreadable. Finally, she gathered the papers before her and delivered her ruling. Given the evidence of neglect and the potential risk of relocation, I am granting temporary guardianship of Lucas Reynolds to Eleanor Reynolds for 60 days, pending further evaluation. The gavel struck, and Sophia's mask cracked, her face twisted with fury as she hissed at me across the aisle. "You think you've won?" "This isn't over," Thomas leaned close and whispered. "She just showed the judge exactly who she really is." For the first time since James's death, I felt something close to relief. My son's foresight had not been in vain. Lucas was safe, for now. The weeks after the emergency hearing were both fragile and fleeting. Lucas settled into a steady rhythm under my care. Homework at the kitchen table, bedtime stories in his father's old room, soccer practice where he laughed again for the first time in weeks. For a little while, it almost felt like healing. But Sophia's shadow never stayed far. At first, she attended the supervised visits, sitting stiffly across from Lucas while scrolling through her phone. Then came the cancellations, one with the excuse of a work meeting, another because of a sudden migraine. When she did appear, she came bearing extravagant gifts, promising trips and adventures she never followed through on. One visit ended in disaster when she arrived with Richard at her side, attempting to force his presence into the room. When the supervisor blocked him, Sophia stormed out, leaving Lucas in tears, abandoned in a place meant for reconnection. It was the clearest glimpse yet of her priorities. Lucas, perceptive beyond his 8 years, noticed everything. One evening on the porch swing, he whispered, "Grandma, when Mom talks about Arizona, I get scared. I don't want to leave school. I don't want to leave you." His small hand wrapped tightly around mine. I reassured him. But that night, Thomas called with urgent news. Sophia's attorney has filed a motion to dismiss the custody arrangement. They're claiming the evidence was manufactured, that you manipulated Lucas into saying things against her. My heart sank, but Thomas's voice was firm. "Our case is strong, Eleanor. But there's another problem. Sophia and Richard have placed deposits on property in the Cayman Islands. If she regains custody, she could take Lucas out of the country, and enforcing custody orders there would be nearly impossible." The thought chilled me to the bone. My grandson's future dangled in the balance, and his mother was planning her escape route. That night, Lucas sat at the table working on a school project about family traditions. He drew 3 figures, a boy, his grandmother and his father smiling down from the stars. He didn't draw his mother. I stared at the picture, my chest aching with both love and dread. James had trusted me to protect his son. Now I knew the stakes were even higher than I'd imagined. Sophia wasn't just trying to take Lucas away from me. She was trying to erase him from everything that tied him to his father. And I would not let that happen. The text arrived just after breakfast. A single line from Sophia. "We need to talk. Alone. Riverside Park. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come without lawyers or the deal is off." I showed it to Thomas immediately. His warning was sharp. "Do not meet her without protection." This is exactly the kind of manipulation James predicted. If she wants to talk, it's not for Lucas's benefit. It's for hers. Still, I agreed to go. Not alone, of course. Thomas waited nearby, out of sight, while I carried a small recorder in my coat pocket. Sophia was already seated on a bench when I arrived, designer sunglasses covering her eyes, posture stiff. She didn't greet me with her usual show of affection. Instead, she went straight to the point. "I'm dropping the custody fight." The words nearly stole my breath. "You are," she nodded. her voice quieter than I'd ever heard. "I can't win against you, Eleanor. You've got the court, the lawyer, even Lucas on your side." Her lips twisted as she said his name. "So I'm making a choice. I'll give up the house, the cars, everything. All I want is freedom." I waited, sensing the hook behind her sudden surrender. "Richard has opportunities overseas," she continued, finally removing her glasses to meet my gaze. "He wants me to join him. If you promise not to press further, not to drag my name through the mud, I'll leave quietly. You'll keep Lucas. No more battles. No more courtrooms." It was the closest thing to honesty I had ever seen from her. For a moment, the mask slipped, revealing a woman tired of pretending, eager to trade her son for the life she really wanted. "You're saying you'll walk away from your own child?" I asked softly, struggling to keep the judgment from my tone. Her eyes hardened. "Don't act surprised. You've always wanted him more than I did. This way, we both win." The silence between us was heavy, broken only by the sound of the river. I thought of James, of the letter he left me, of the little boy upstairs drawing his father in the stars. I realized then what Sophia truly was. Not a grieving widow, not even a rival, but a woman who had already abandoned her son in every way that mattered. "I'll let my attorney handle the details," I said finally, rising from the bench. Her lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. "Good. Then we're done here." But as I walked away, I knew we weren't done. Not yet. Her absence might give Lucas peace, but her choices, her betrayal, would cast a shadow he would carry for years. And it would be my job to help him find the light. 6 weeks later, the house felt different. Not because the furniture had changed or the walls were repainted, but because the weight that once lingered in every room had finally lifted. Sophia had gone. Quietly, without fanfare, she signed the papers that ended her fight. She surrendered the house, the cars, even her claim to Lucas. She had chosen her freedom with Richard over motherhood. Lucas adjusted faster than I expected. At first, he asked if his mom was coming back. I told him the truth gently, with words the family therapist had suggested. "She loves you in her own way. But sometimes adults can't give the kind of love a child needs. That's why I'm here." He nodded, eyes watery but steady. "I'm not scared anymore," he whispered. Our days grew simple. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, soccer practices where I cheered louder than anyone else, quiet evenings where we worked on puzzles James had once loved. Each routine stitched a little more stability into Lucas's fragile world. One afternoon, he brought me a drawing from school. It showed 3 figures, a boy, his father drawn like a glowing star above, and a grandmother standing firmly beside him. He pressed it into my hands and said, "This is my family now." Tears blurred my vision as I hugged him close. I thought of James, his foresight, his courage, his trust in me. He had known I could protect his son when he no longer could. And though the road had been cruel and unforgiving, I had kept my promise. That night, Lucas and I sat together on the porch swing as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold. His small head rested on my shoulder, and for the first time since that terrible phone call, my heart felt a fragile kind of peace. "We're safe now, Lucas," I whispered into the evening air. "Your father's love will always protect us." The swing creaked softly. The stars began to appear, and for a moment the world felt whole again. Life has a way of testing us in moments we least expect. For me, it was a late-night phone call that changed everything. I thought I had lost my son forever. But what I discovered was that his love and foresight were still protecting us, even after he was gone. To every woman watching this, especially those of us in our middle years, never underestimate your own strength. We may feel overlooked, even dismissed, but when it comes to protecting the people we love, we carry a power deeper than anyone imagines. Family is not always defined by who stays in the photo. Sometimes it's defined by who fights to remain. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and share, because every story here is a reminder. Our voices matter, our choices matter, and our love can change everything. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Stories like this remind us that behind every closed door lies a truth waiting to be revealed. And sometimes the quietest voices carry the greatest strength. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Your support helps keep these stories alive and brings more voices to light. And remember, every ending is just the beginning of another story. Stay tuned, because the next one may surprise you even more.